If you're young, you've heard it a million times.
America has a baby problem.
Gen Z and millennials don't want kids.
I ain't trying to have them little shits either.
Birth rates in the U.S. are at the lowest that they've ever been in the entire history of the U.S.
I want more babies in the United States of America.
But young people aren't childless because of the decline of family values or the rise of feminism, or because we're putting our careers in front of our families, as many elites and media pundits would have you believe. No, the reason why young people aren't having children is much more simple than that. But why is not wanting kids a problem in the first place? In 2023, America's fertility rate hit the lowest point that it's been in history. Economists have sounded the alarm that rapidly falling birth rates could leave America in a situation like Japan, where there are large numbers of retired elderly people and not enough young workers paying into the system to support them. In other words, if these population trends continue and there isn't any meaningful change in our current system, our social programs and safety nets will become more and more burdened until America's elderly no longer have the support that they need to survive through retirement. And America, these economists say, will collapse. This is an issue that the highest levels of our government have attempted to address, with President Donald Trump endorsing the proposal to offer $5,000 to new mothers as a baby bonus and naming himself the fertility president.
I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay. That's not bad.
Big corporations and CEOs are also sounding the alarm about the declining American population.
The birth rate is very low in almost every country. And so unless that changes, civilization will disappear.
After all, who will be there to work on the assembly lines if America's population keeps declining? Although, Elon Musk's particular obsession with population collapse may or may not be more related to far-right extremism, the desire to make America into a white nation devoid of minorities, and his weird obsession with Leto Atreides II from Dune making a hard choice to save the rest of humanity. Long story short, and spoiler alert, if you plan to read 3,000 pages over 4 books to get to this part, but long story short, Leto Atreides II turns into a big-ass worm, 1. 2. Creates numerous progeny that he hopes will one day populate the planet. 3. Accumulates untold resources. 4. Rules the universe mercilessly for 3,000 years. And then 5. Gets pushed into a river and dies. Elon Musk has already done the first 3 steps, and one can only assume that he is trying his grubby little hands at the final 2. But simply telling young people to have more kids, or throwing a $5,000 baby bonus at new parents, or having 11 children that all despise you isn't going to solve America's population problems. And that's because the elites are fundamentally wrong about why Gen Z and millennials don't want to have kids. Really, there are 3 major reasons why younger generations just don't want to have kids anymore. And not all of them are obvious at a first glance. Firstly, depending on which state you live in and your employer, the policy around how much time you can take off for having a child and whether it's paid or unpaid can vary drastically. The US is one of the only countries in the developed world without standards for paid parental leave. So new parents have to wade through confusing policies to see whether they would be able to take time off. And for folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, if that time off is unpaid, which it usually is, they may be faced with the impossible choice between spending time to take care of their child and being able to pay the rent. Seriously, mandating paid maternity, paternity, and family leave across the nation is such a no-brainer that it's honestly a little embarrassing that we don't have it yet. But then again, there are a lot of broken and embarrassing things about the American healthcare and insurance industries, but that's a topic for another day. Secondly, and this is something that has been weighing on a lot of friends of mine, but there is just so much chaos happening around us, not just in America, but also around the world, from constant wars and America's entanglements around the globe to the unending existential dread of the climate crisis to the unprecedented political polarization and rise of right-wing extremism that only seems to be getting worse and worse. With all of that constantly being blasted into our minds by the 24-hour news cycle and the all-powerful hand of the social media algorithm, bringing a child into this world is sort of unthinkable. Perhaps unethical even. Cruel even. Call me chronically online, but I'm not even sure if we'll have a country 2 years from now. What with Donald Trump dancing himself a dictator and sending the military to American cities from LA to DC and sending ICE to arrest and deport Americans across the nation. You know, I'm not conspiracy minded, but if you are, you might even think that he's telegraphing or even practicing for a military takeover to make things go his way. He already tried an insurrection once and didn't get punished for it. Now that he's back in power, do we really expect him not to try it again? Who knows? I can't even imagine what the world will be like in 2 years, much less for the years that my children would be growing up. And with so much instability and chaos around the world, with the world burning around us, is it really any wonder why young people are hesitant to have children? Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, we are just plain broke. Like seriously, not only are we broke, we can't even foresee a single future where we're not broke. For so many young folks, the job market and the workplace have been nothing short of brutal. This is something that we've been saying for years and years, but for some reason, nobody has wanted to listen. And that's not to mention anything about stagnating wages and skyrocketing cost of living. Look, wages, cost of living, those are just numbers. So when I say that we aren't getting paid enough and our housing and groceries cost too much, it's easier for older, wealthier generations who haven't experienced what we are experiencing to say, young people are spending too much money on matcha, or Labubus, or avocado toast. You need to put your head down and work harder. Well, it's true that young people are spending way too much money, but what we are spending way too much money on is the insane rent prices, on car payments, on groceries, on utilities, on paying off enormous student loans, on random healthcare expenses. At the end of the month, once we've paid off all of the expenses necessary for us to survive, all we have left over is crumbs. Crumbs. And we do this song and dance month after month after month. Go to work 5 days a week, pay our rent, get to the end of the month with crumbs. Start over again next month. Go to work 5 days a week, pay our rent, get to the end of the month with crumbs. Again and again and again from now until we win the lottery or get into an accident that puts us into crippling medical debt. It's bleak, I know. But once you understand that this is a life that so many young people are living today, you can better understand why we don't want to have kids. We can't even give ourselves a good life. How on earth are we gonna give our children a good life? That's if we even have the space to raise children in the first place. It seems that home ownership for young people is a thing of the past, with many millennials and Gen Zs opting to live at home with their parents or to stay permanent renters. Housing prices are so damn expensive that even starter homes, smaller homes that older generations would purchase in their 20s as a little trial run or experiment to experience homeownership, are now upwards of $1 million in all of the major cities in America. Like, come on. Do you really expect us all to start having kids and raising families in a 600 square foot studio or 1-bedroom apartment with loud-ass neighbors stomping their feet above us? For younger generations, owning a home is completely out of the picture. And if we continue to treat housing as an investment vehicle or a way to make a quick buck off of Airbnb, we will never fix our housing problem. That's why this liberal solution that you're seeing in places like California, pushed by people like Governor Newsom and Ezra Klein of, we just need to deregulate and build more housing, is not a long-term solution to our housing woes. Sure, building affordable housing is part of the solution. Not that these people really care about building affordable housing. But as long as housing is treated as a vehicle for corporate greed rather than a thing that human beings need to survive and thrive in our society, we will forever be stuck in this trap of unaffordable housing. So, I live in Koreatown in Los Angeles, one of the densest neighborhoods in America. For comparison, it's denser than the average of the 5 boroughs in New York City. Over the past decade, there has been an insane amount of development in this neighborhood, much of it being new apartment complexes or converting old high-rise office buildings into new housing units. And yet, despite all of this development, we still have an enormous housing problem. But why is that? Some would say it's because LA has a housing shortage. But if you look at the numbers, you would see a completely different story. As of the most recent data from the LA Homeless Services Authority, the LA area has 72,000 homeless individuals. And at the same time, the LA area has 320,000 vacant housing units. Not only do we have enough units to house every single homeless person in Los Angeles, we have enough vacant units to give every homeless person 4 homes, and we'd still have 30,000 vacant units left over. So you have to ask, what are we doing with all those vacant units? Well, they're just sitting there, empty, increasing in value for their corporate developers, while 72,000 Angelenos live on the streets. The problem is using housing as an investment vehicle instead of what it should be, a place for people, for human beings, for families to live. The reason why I'm stressing this so much is because lack of affordable housing is one of the big barriers to having children. I mean that both financially and in terms of space. Like a 600 square foot apartment might be enough space for a small cat, perhaps a small dog, but even then you're cutting it close. But for 2 full-grown adults, 2 kids with all their clothes and toys and everything else that kids should have growing up, it's not ideal, to say the least. Housing is insanely expensive, but it's only one piece of the pie. A big-ass piece, yes, but still just one piece. I haven't even talked about the cost of daycare, schooling, food, clothes, diapers, medical expenses, activities, and everything that goes into raising a kid from when they're a baby till they're an adult. On average, raising a child can cost $300,000 in total, or at minimum, $1,400 every month. Like, I don't even spend that much money on myself a month. And then you have Donald Trump going around saying that he's gonna be the fertility president by giving people who are living paycheck to paycheck, who are struggling to make rent, $5,000 for having a baby. It's insulting. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering a 5-course meal, and then tipping 3 nickels. $5,000 won't even cover anesthesia, let alone a C-section, not to mention anything about food, daycare, diapers, schooling, anything that it actually takes to raise a kid for 18 years in the first place. Why don't we focus on fixing our broken system that is keeping workers and our younger generations poor? Why don't we focus on addressing the unbelievable wealth inequality that is destroying our country and leaving countless Americans without healthcare, with poor infrastructure, and with expensive childcare options? I think it's about time that the billionaires, people like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, pay their fair share. And we could build programs like universal childcare for families across the nation. That's what I want to see in this country. Universal childcare. This is something that New Mexico just last week announced that they are implementing, the first state to do so. It's also something that exists in countless nations across the globe. We need to show young folks, young families, that the government actually cares to look out for them and their children, to support them in meaningful ways rather than just throwing baby bonus crumbs at them. This is the bare minimum. Anyways, this was fun. I hope you had fun. I'm not planning on having children anytime soon, but if you want children, or if you don't want children, or if you already have children, I would love to know why. Let me know if there was anything I missed, and if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure that you would also enjoy this video about the extreme wellness epidemic. I mean, it's the same guy doing the talking and scripting and editing, so